There are moments in life when the mind is full, but the heart feels distant. When we know many things, but feel disconnected from what matters most. Jesus didn't come to overwhelm the mind with rules. He came to awaken the heart. Again and again, his teachings bypass logic, bypass status, bypass performance, and speak directly to the place within us that still knows love, truth, and peace. So today, let's slow down and listen not with analysis, but with openness. Because the heart doesn't awaken through effort. It awakens through recognition. Jesus taught that the kingdom of God is not somewhere far away, not something to earn, not something to reach after proving ourselves. He said the kingdom is within you. This was not meant to confuse us. It was meant to remind us that the peace we are seeking is not missing, that love is not distant, that God is not waiting for us to become someone else. The heart awakens when we stop searching outside for what has always been planted within. Jesus spoke often in ways that unsettled the ego but liberated the soul. "Blessed are the poor in spirit," he said, not because poverty is holy, but because emptiness makes space. The heart awakens when we stop pretending to be full, when we admit we don't have it all together, when we release the illusion of self-sufficiency. Pride closes the heart. Humility opens it, not humiliation, but humility. The quiet recognition that we are held, not self-made. Jesus taught forgiveness not as moral superiority, but as freedom. Forgive them, he said, not because harm doesn't matter, but because holding onto it keeps the wound alive. The heart awakens when resentment loosens its grip, when the nervous system no longer has to relive the past, when we choose peace over the familiar ache of anger. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering who you are beyond the injury. Jesus taught love in ways that challenged every condition we place on it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemies. Not because everyone is safe, not because boundaries don't matter, but because love is the nature of the awakened heart. The heart awakens when it no longer needs enemies to define itself, when it no longer needs superiority to feel secure, when it recognizes that fear and separation are learned states, not eternal truths. Jesus never said love would be easy. He showed that love is transformative. He taught that worry does not add a single hour to life. This was not dismissal. It was compassion. He knew how deeply the human mind struggles with fear of the future. So he gently reminded us that life is lived only here, only now. The heart awakens when we stop rehearsing tomorrow's pain, when we stop borrowing trouble from a future that hasn't arrived, when we trust that today has enough grace for today. Jesus pointed again and again to simplicity. Look at the birds, look at the lilies. Not as metaphors to admire, but as invitations to return to presence. The heart awakens when we remember how to be here, when we stop racing ahead, when we stop measuring our worth by productivity or outcome. Presence is holy ground. Jesus taught that those who seek will find. Not because God is hiding, but because seeking loosens certainty. The heart awakens when curiosity replaces control, when we allow ourselves not to know, when we ask honestly instead of performing belief. Truth does not fear questions. Love does not fear inquiry. Jesus taught that the last shall be first, not as reversal for the sake of drama, but as revelation. That worth is not hierarchical, that the heart does not awaken through dominance, status, or recognition. The heart awakens when we stop competing for value and start recognizing inherent dignity. Jesus taught that the meek inherit the earth. Meekness is not weakness. It is strength without aggression, power without fear. The heart awakens when force is no longer required, when the nervous system relaxes enough to trust gentleness. Again and again, Jesus drew people inward, away from rigid law, away from performance, away from external approval, and toward conscience, toward compassion, toward inner truth. He taught that what defiles a person is not what enters them, but what comes from within, not as condemnation, but as clarity. The heart awakens when we see that fear, bitterness, and judgment are learned responses, not our essence, and that love, peace, and compassion are not something we manufacture, but something we uncover. Jesus never rushed transformation. He met people where they were. He asked questions. He noticed. He stayed. The heart awakens slowly, gently, safely, and always in love. So if you feel tired of trying to be spiritual, tired of striving, tired of fixing yourself, this is your reminder. You were never meant to force awakening. The heart awakens when it feels safe enough to open. And that safety is what Jesus came to remind us of. And that safety was never meant to come from certainty, from control, or from having everything figured out. Jesus did not offer safety through guarantees. He offered safety through presence. He showed us, again and again, that love is not fragile, that truth does not disappear when questioned, that God is not offended by our humanity. The heart awakens when it realizes it does not have to defend itself anymore. So many of us learned to guard our hearts early, to stay alert, to brace, to protect ourselves from disappointment, rejection, or loss. Jesus understood this. That is why he did not shame fear. He addressed it gently. "Fear not," he said, not as a command, but as an invitation to notice how often fear is running quietly in the background, how often it shapes our choices, our relationships, our self-image. The heart awakens when fear is no longer treated as an enemy, but as a signal that love is needed. Jesus taught that peace does not come from changing the world first, but from seeing the world differently. When he said, "Be in the world, but not of it," he was pointing to an inner shift, a remembering that your identity is not rooted in chaos, not defined by circumstance, not determined by how things appear on the surface. The heart awakens when it stops mistaking external noise for internal truth. Jesus invited people into stillness, not withdrawal, but clarity. He would step away to pray, he would pause before responding, he would listen before acting, not because urgency was wrong, but because presence is powerful. The heart awakens when it learns how to be still without feeling unsafe. So much of our striving comes from the belief that if we stop, we will fall behind, that if we rest, we will lose momentum, that if we soften, something will go wrong. Jesus showed a different way. He trusted timing. He trusted unfolding. He trusted that what was meant to happen would happen without force. The heart awakens when we stop pushing against life and start moving with it. Jesus taught that the truth would set us free. Not truth as information, but truth as recognition. The recognition that you are not broken, that you are not separate from love, that you are not failing because you feel afraid or unsure. The heart awakens when shame loosens its grip. Jesus did not awaken hearts by pointing out flaws. He awakened them by seeing wholeness where others saw failure. He saw dignity in the overlooked, worth in the outcast, light in those who had forgotten it was there. And he sees that same light now. So if your heart feels tired or guarded or hesitant to open, there is nothing wrong with you. Awakening is not sudden, it is relational. It happens as trust grows, as safety deepens, as love becomes believable again. Jesus came to remind us that we are already held, already known, already loved, and the heart awakens the moment it begins to believe that this might be true. If something in this reflection stirred your heart, let yourself sit with it for a moment. You don't need to analyze it. You don't need to rush away. If you'd like more reflections like this, grounded in the teachings of Jesus and meant to awaken peace, compassion, and inner truth, you're welcome to subscribe and return whenever you need a reminder. Thank you for sharing this quiet space. May your heart continue to open gently in its own time.